At the dawn of the 17th century, a new power emerged on the world stage. It wasn't a kingdom, nor was it an empire built by a conquering king. It was a company, the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, and it would grow to reshape the destinies of nations across the globe. For 2 centuries, this corporation commanded armies, ruled cities, and built an economic empire that stretched from the foggy harbors of Amsterdam to the distant shores of Japan. This is the story of how the world's first true multinational corporation influenced, disrupted, and transformed entire civilizations, leaving a shadow that stretches into our modern world. The year is 1602. The Netherlands, a small republic fresh from its War of Independence, pools its resources to create something unprecedented, a trading company with the powers of a state. The Verenigde Compagnie was given a monopoly on trade with Asia, but it could also negotiate treaties, build forts, and even wage war. From the very beginning, it was designed to be more than just a business. It was an instrument of economic and political dominance, a global giant in the making. As its iconic flight ships set sail from Amsterdam, they weren't just carrying merchants and cargo. They were carrying the seeds of a new world order. When the VOC's ships first arrived in Asia, they entered a world of ancient kingdoms and sophisticated trade networks that had existed for centuries. From the powerful sultanates of Java to the magnificent courts of India, local rulers were accustomed to dealing with foreign traders. But these Dutchmen were different. They arrived not just with goods to trade, but with a charter that gave them quasi-sovereign powers. In the spice-rich islands of what is now Indonesia, the VOC quickly moved to disrupt the local trade that had made rulers in Banten and Ternate wealthy and powerful. They didn't just want to buy spices, they wanted to control the entire supply chain. Local rulers soon discovered that this foreign company wielded financial resources and military technology that could rival, and often surpass, their own kingdoms. The VOC offered alliances, promising wealth and protection, but these deals often came at a steep price, slowly eroding local sovereignty and restructuring regional politics to serve Dutch interests. Before the VOC, the sea lanes of Asia were dominated by a patchwork of powers. Arab dhows, Chinese junks, and the fleets of various sultanates crisscrossed the Indian Ocean. Portugal had established a string of fortified ports, but its grip was tenuous. The arrival of the VOC shattered this old system. They seized Malacca from the Portuguese in 1641, giving them control over the vital strait. They drove the Portuguese from Ceylon, securing a monopoly on cinnamon. The VOC's well-armed ships and aggressive tactics systematically dismantled existing trade networks. Nations that once commanded the seas found their maritime power eclipsed by a corporation from a small European republic. To cement its power in Asia, the VOC needed a capital, a central administrative hub from which it could project its authority. They found it in the port of Jayakarta on the island of Java. After destroying the local town, they built a new city in its place, Batavia. Designed as a European city in the heart of Asia, Batavia became the nerve center of the VOC's vast empire. It was a fortress, a major port, and the seat of the Governor-General. From here, the company's officials managed a network of trading posts stretching from the Persian Gulf to Japan. Asian envoys from once mighty kingdoms now had to travel to Batavia to negotiate with company officials. The rise of Batavia symbolized the decline of regional powers. Javanese states that had resisted were weakened or conquered, and the VOC methodically replaced vibrant, independent trade networks with its own rigid, monopolistic system, fundamentally shifting the balance of power across the entire archipelago. The VOC's influence wasn't limited to the Spice Islands. On the Indian subcontinent, it found a different, but equally lucrative, opportunity. While the Mughal Empire was far too powerful to be colonized, it was not immune to the VOC's economic might. The company established trading posts along the Coromandel coast and in Bengal, focusing on a product that was in high demand in Europe: textiles. The VOC's insatiable demand for Indian cloth, silk, and dyes acted like an economic hurricane. It reshaped entire industries, pulling weavers and artisans into its orbit and redirecting vast quantities of goods away from traditional Asian markets toward Europe. This influx of Dutch silver and demand for Indian goods forced even the mighty Mughal emperors to adjust their trade policies. The company's presence also intensified competition with the emerging English East India Company, setting the stage for a century-long struggle for dominance in India. Far to the east, Japan under the Tokugawa shogunate had adopted a strict policy of isolation, wary of European influence and colonial ambitions. Nearly all foreigners were expelled, yet one exception was made: the Dutch. The VOC was granted exclusive access to trade through a tiny, man-made island in Nagasaki Harbor called Deshima. For over 200 years, this small outpost was Japan's sole window to the Western world. Through the traders on Deshima, the Japanese shogunate received valuable information about global affairs, science, and technology, a field of study that became known as Rangaku, or Dutch learning. The VOC held a lucrative monopoly, but in Japan, their power was strictly contained. They were guests, not masters, providing a unique service that allowed Japan to remain connected to the outside world on its own terms, a stark contrast to the VOC's aggressive expansion elsewhere. Halfway around the world, the VOC's need for a secure stopover point on the long, treacherous voyage to Asia led to one of its most consequential and enduring legacies. In 1652, the company established a small refreshment station at the Cape of Good Hope. It was never intended to be a full-fledged colony, but simply a place for ships to restock on fresh water, meat, and vegetables. However, the station grew. Dutch settlers, known as Freeburgers, began to farm the surrounding lands, pushing deeper into the interior. This expansion inevitably brought them into contact, and then conflict, with the indigenous Khoikhoi and San peoples. The Cape Colony disrupted traditional societies, dispossessed people of their land, and laid the foundation for a settler state that would profoundly alter the course of South African history for centuries to come. The cultural collisions that began at this corporate outpost still echo today. Back in Europe, the VOC's unprecedented success sent shockwaves through the corridors of power. Kings, queens, and ministers watched with a mixture of envy and alarm as this Dutch company grew richer and more powerful than many states. The sheer volume of Asian goods, spices, tea, porcelain, silk that the VOC imported transformed European tastes and economies. The company's profits funded the Dutch Golden Age, but it also forced rivals to react. England and France, seeing the immense wealth being generated, ramped up the capabilities of their own East India companies, seeking to carve out their own piece of the Asian trade. Naval strategies were reevaluated, and a new era of global corporate competition began. Europe's great powers suddenly found themselves overshadowed not by another empire, but by a company whose reach extended across 3 oceans. The VOC did not merely influence nations, it fundamentally reshaped them. It redrew maps, dismantled economies, and toppled local rulers. It connected the world in new ways, creating global supply chains for spices, textiles, and tea, while simultaneously imposing a brutal, monopolistic order. Its network of forts, ports, and colonies formed a commercial empire unlike any the world had ever seen. The wealth it extracted from Asia flowed back to Europe, fueling economic booms and shifting the global balance of power decisively toward the West. The VOC's legacy is written in the architecture of cities like Jakarta and Cape Town. in the altered trade routes of the Indian Ocean, and in the complex histories of nations from Indonesia to South Africa. It commanded armies, minted its own currency, and changed the destiny of millions. For 2 centuries, it operated as a state in all but name, a corporate titan that held sway over vast swaths of the planet. Yet, it was never a kingdom, it was only a company. When unchecked, can forge an empire and leave a shadow that lasts for centuries. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe,